Well, I'd like to welcome you out to another episode of the Lodestone Training and Consulting Podcast. I'm Jared Ross.
And I'm Chris Johnson.
And this is what, our third time?
It is.
It is. So hopefully...
Well, officially. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't talk about those first two.
Actually, as soon as John's computer's back up, he should be putting together an old podcast we did a year ago, 2 years ago, where he actually filmed the whole thing.
I remember that.
Yeah, with all the conceal carry stuff. So that project should be done. So that'll get thrown up there at some point. But yeah, here we are. So one of the things I've been thinking about, I guess where I want to start at today's podcast out, is we just did a class with a good group of guys and younger than us. And
it's not hard to do anymore. I mean,
I guess
I'm
so.
almost 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your beard says that.
I'm a lot closer to 50 than 25.
These guys were talking, and they were talking about Band of Brothers, and it was a new experience for them. And some of their terminology I thought was funny because they were doing, what did they call it? It wasn't airborne jumps or parachuting. It was like night leaps or something like that. Like, what are you guys talking about? And then the other guy was, oh yeah. And then they went to this place called Bastogne, and it was really cold for a while. And listening to them, they were obviously enjoying the series,
Yeah,
and saw a lot of good in it. But it just struck me that, man, these guys, they don't have that same background, or they don't have that foundation that you and I do. Both of us, again, in the 82nd, we have that history of from World War II.
But I knew that stuff before I went in the 82nd.
Yeah.
Like I knew, I would say a good rudimentary history. I knew the Battle of the Bulge. I mean, I had a great uncle that fought in the Battle of the Bulge.
My earliest movie I can remember watching with my dad, so I must have been 3 or 4 years old. So I watched Patton in our house on TV, and so I knew about the Battle of the Bulge since I was 3. I
can think, like right now, trying to do that, like old, I remember The Longest Day.
Okay.
I remember The Longest Day. Not the oldest movie I can remember, but I remember watching that and having that trigger. What else happened? Like, okay, what more can be learned about these events? And I think they were integral in decisions that I made later in my life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's definitely one of the reasons why I wanted to become a paratrooper. I saw those movies. I saw those guys, jumping behind enemy lines, and
I watched not the Longest Day, The Bridge Too Far.
Oh yeah,
I remember seeing that again prior to my military experience. That was
one of the
formative.
coolest things that I got to do in the 82nd was I got to go to Nijmegen.
Yeah,
and walking around Nijmegen with a AA on your shoulder. We did not buy a drink. I mean, I don't drink, but I did not buy a meal the entire time I was there. Those people are still grateful to this day.
Yeah.
It was a pretty cool experience. That is definitely, again, everyone knows Normandy. Well, shoot, I think that everyone does.
Yeah.
If you don't know Normandy, look it up. But Operation Market Garden, that was, we'll be home by Christmas, boys. This is going to be it. This is going to be it, And, that was, for me, a lesson in the importance of understanding the operational battlefield and rhythm and operational supply. So many lessons I learned out of that movie. Watching it as a boy, watching it as a man, watching it as a paratrooper, watching it as a Green Beret. There's a lot of lessons that you can get out of that film.
Absolutely. So that it really is a good lead into some of the stuff I've been thinking about. As I just started to realize these guys don't have the same background. They don't have the same base that I do. And that led to a lot of other thoughts and thinking about other students and other experiences that I've had with people not understanding my point of reference as I'm trying to teach and explain. And that's one of our roles as an instructor, is to find that point of reference, or that that commonality, something that we can build on so they can understand clearly what's being taught.
Well, I definitely think that this last crew, and I've seen this for a while, it was more the Call of Duty set, less the Platoon and Full Metal Jacket. You know, we grew up on Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Hamburger Hill, all of those. They've grown up on Call of Duty. It's still warfare, but it's instantaneous and there's no thought about it. You know, the movies that we watched, they triggered me to go and do more research. I wanted to learn more. I've played, you know, I don't know if it's Call of Duty or Modern War or what. I've played those video games, and they're fun, they're entertaining, but they're very surface level. They don't take you that next, like, well, what was really going on here? What is, you know, even the historical ones, you know, and then they're in the Pacific or when they're in World War II, they don't really drive the same way that like those movies did for me, to gain that further knowledge. It's more about that multiplayer, you know, experience, and then it's so, again, surface level, like,
Well,
there's no consequences to your actions.
like one of the good things about Platoon is the preparation for it. And I think is one of the first movies that they've prepared for other movies as well, but they really spent a lot of time in that. So those guys, most of them, they were out in the jungle doing that small unit tactics and, you know, not really react to anything, but just we're going to walk, now we're going to dig in, now we're going to sleep with the guard up, and then we're going to do it again, and we're going to do it again. And they were getting beat down. So there was a lot of that was portrayed in that movie.
Yeah.
So you saw that realism where, like you said, just on the surface, being raised on those video games, they didn't see that. They don't experience that. They weren't exposed to even that concept.
And it's so rapid. It's so quick. It
Yeah.
happens, you know, instantaneously. There's none of the tactical patience.
So I thought that the last, I guess, scenario that we did with them before we indexed everything for the multiple days, that was one of the best ones. And why? Because they misunderstood where the area
objective
was.
was, yeah.
So they were walking around and patrolling in the woods in an area that we weren't even in. And then finally, once, you know, we realized, hey, these guys they're not lost per se.
They're
but-
just not where they
not where they need to be. So after an hour of them doing that, we finally, like, okay, here's a clue. This is where you need to go. And then we got into the engagement. But that was good. Good for them.
No, and it's not a game. It's training, and sometimes in training, you do have that lull. You do have that time where it's just, and I think that's such a good thing because it's easy to stay switched on and 100% for a moment, for an hour or two. But when you do it into a prolonged thing, I mean, even some of the training exercises that I've done where, you know, we'll be in a hide site or something, we'll be watching an objective, and we'll be out there for 48 hours. They try and make it as realistic as possible, but you really can't. You can't duplicate the boredom as easily, you know. And when doing it in reality, man, it can be really, really boring. I got really good at retelling myself stories. Yeah, that was one of the things. That and math. You know, 2 + 2 is 4. 4 + 4 is 8, and just keep going as far as I can. And you know, I usually get to about 64.
Yeah.
So start over.
After you run out of your fingers and toes, and your buddy's fingers and toes.
Yeah, then I got to start over.
Yeah.
And, I think I don't want to say that it's a calculated thing, because we get fed the media that we choose to be fed. But I do think that it is being taken advantage of by adversarial forces to weaken everything, weaken the foundation. And I mean, we can look at the unconventional warfare campaign that is being fought against the United States, and I can pull example after example after example. Obviously you have, coming out of World War II, you have some of the most, it's called the greatest generation for a reason. You have men that have been purified by war. They have fought and they have lost, and they came back with no other purpose than, hey, I almost died. I'm going to build a family. I'm going to build a legacy. I'm going to build, 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 build. And then they did, and they were super successful. And because they suffered, the next generation came along and they're like, well, we're going to take care of our kids.
Uh-huh.
And then we have that first generation where the children are actually doing better than the parents. And you start to slide into this slippery slope of me first and the gimme gimmes. Now, we can talk about the unconventional warfare that we have going on right now against this country, that are taking advantage of the prosperity that this nation's had. And you think about that, like, well, how do you take advantage? Well, you take advantage of anything you can, because we've had it so good for so long. We start to focus and weaken people. And a big thing is the comparative, like, oh, you don't have this and that person has that, and dividing people and things like that. That's very easy to talk about. But one of the other things, one of the tenets of UW is disruption. And if you can disrupt the way that a system works, you take the family, for instance,
Yeah.
you know, the mother, the father, the children, everyone has their roles. We throw in that men are not good enough, and we start attacking masculinity. We start attacking fathers. We pull fathers out of the picture. Look at the inner city,
Yep.
where there's such an encouragement for men not to be in the picture. And it is almost a reward where there will be, you see this, and we can talk about America, but I'm going to talk about another allied country. We'll talk about England. In England, if there is a couple and they have a child, there are programs for them. But if there is not a husband and wife, and there's a child, the mother gets housing, she gets an allowance, she gets all these things, childcare, education, all these programs that are supposed to be beneficial. And again, we want people to succeed, but it's an encouragement not to have that husband. And so you have these council estates where it's nothing but unwed mothers. And it's a system and it's a program that continues to encourage that behavior. We have the same thing going on here in the States. Same kind of concept of this. We don't need men. And there's a lot of attack from media. Again, who's the dumb character on every sitcom? You know,
It's the
man.
father.
It's the father.
Yep.
He's incompetent. He's an idiot. You know, you go back to I think of Home Improvement.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Tim Allen?
Tim Allen. Yeah, I was going to say Bill Allen. Tim Allen. He was an idiot. You know, they always mocked him, and he had his struggles, but he was putting food on the table. He was providing for his family. He was doing these things, and they made the manly, masculine character into a farce. You know, they made him into this silly thing, and that. I think it's deliberate.
Oh, I think it's deliberate 100%. I recently listened to an interview. I forget the guy's name. The guy's Andrew Young. And Andrew Young, he's an artist. He's an animator. He's worked for
DreamWorks, right?
DreamWorks, yeah. He worked for DreamWorks and some other things. And you can look him up and maybe listen to his podcast, or not his podcast, but some of the interviews that he's given. And the one thing he talks about, his biggest aha moment was he's working at DreamWorks and he's working on, was it Mr. Peabody and Sherman movie. And so after the movie wasn't complete, but I guess a rough edit was done, and they brought everybody in who all participated in a theater, and I guess this is a normal thing, and they showed him the movie. So during this movie with his animation, he only saw his little piece. Mm-hmm. So he never saw the big picture. So he's here, and everyone's excited, big deal. And they show the movie, and he said he was appalled at all the negative things that were being done and all the different attacks on traditional families. And he was like, anyways, from that experience, then he said something. So after he said something, he got pulled into his boss's boss And basically, they asked him, so I've heard that you didn't like, you have some concerns, or maybe you were offended by some of the things in here, and what offended you? So then he started going through and he lists all these things that were basically attacks on the traditional family. And some of the statements made by the bad guy. Now, I've never seen this movie,
Yeah.
so I couldn't even start quoting some of it. But from this, then his boss's boss, or whatever, the guy who was being interviewed, basically then said, "Okay, and now I understand, and we're not being subtle enough." Basically, was saying that, okay, yeah, that's the message we want to get across, but we're not being clever enough because you picked it out, and
Yeah.
if you can pick it, everyone else can, and we still want to send that message. And some of the things that he talks about in this interview was how they'll take a character, and it wasn't just this movie. He had other experiences in some different animated movies that he was working for, basically where they took a person. So say we'll take a traditional, here's the father, but then we'll have a quote that everyone knows is bad, and then they'll then have him out of context use that quote, so there'll be people remember, oh, well, I know that's a bad quote, so this guy must be a bad guy. Or what they'll also do is they'll take characters that are obviously doing bad things, and obviously the bad guy, but then they'll have them say good quotes from that are common. Abby, do you remember the one specific one that had something to do with
it might have been
with the
like,
family?
The family is the foundation of society.
Yes, that's what it was.
I think they had a character say that, and then like down the line, the character's doing like horrible things.
Yes. So that's one of the things he said that he saw. So they're targeting this movie to little children, and they're having a character do horrible things, is obviously the bad guy, but then have him say things like that the family is the foundation of society. So now this impressionable little kid, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, is sucking it all up, and they hear that quote and know that's a bad guy. So then when somebody uses that as a defense or as to teach a correct principle, teach a truth, their immediate response is, oh, that's bad, because I remember subconsciously this evil person doing something. And so he was, through his experiences, so appalled at this, and he realized it's his opinion, I should say, that a lot of this is being done purposely. They are targeting things that they don't like. Who are these people? Disney right now, they're in all kinds of hot water because of all their woke agenda, that their stock is crashing and all their stuff is bombing. But that's what they've been doing for the longest time. They've had these individuals who had their specific political agendas, and they've been spinning it in everything they do. And finally, the normal people are catching on to that, and they're rejecting that message. So, Disney hasn't been clever enough. They as that one, whatever.
Oh, it's
boss
the
said.
whole, boiling the frog, and it's the heat got turned up, and we all felt the heat in 2020. Everyone felt it. I was hoping for a better reaction. There's still people that don't want to hop out of the pot.
Yeah.
But like, well, it's just getting a little warmer. I mean, I'm still comfortable. And it's sad. It is very sad that people will choose comfort over, success and security and,
Well, and that's again, Benjamin Franklin. I hope I'm good with these quotes. Probably somebody else, but I'm pretty sure it's Ben Franklin, who was
yes, it is. I know the quote
who said, basically security versus liberty. Are you going to give up your liberty for security? That's
If
can't do that.
if you surrender your liberty for security, you'll have neither.
Yeah.
And that's a true statement. And I find that we can look and see all these things that are going on. The more aware we are of a problem, the easier it is going to be to diagnose it and to address it. We don't need to hide our heads in the sand and be like, oh, there's all these horrible things. I don't know what to do. Well, a wise man once said, lift where you stand. That's why we do what we do. That's why we run classes like small unit tactics. And I will say it time and time again, small unit tactics in the 3 or 5 or even the 8 days that we have students, we're not going to make you into a ninja.
No.
And anyone that tells you, oh, I'm going to make you into an expert, they're just blowing smoke. You got to understand that the premier small unit tactics school is 90 days long. You know, I mean, it's not 8 days.
Yeah.
And it is a rough 90 days. Shoot, in the Q course, just to get us on par with each other and have everyone gel enough to continue through the Q course and be prepared to go to your ODA, it's 5 weeks. And that's just scratching the surface on
Yeah.
it. What our SUT class is about is giving you an opportunity to be a leader, to grow and to understand people, and to be able to express capabilities and to teach other people and pull other people through those difficult circumstances. I look at the course catalog that we have, and we have a lot of things like this. We see that hole. We see that hole in society where we're just not challenged. And so we have things like the Light Fighter that's coming up. We have the Night Fighter that's coming up.
I don't know if that's been announced yet.
Oh, well,
But
the Night Fighter, just be prepared. You know, people are like, well, what's the Night Fighter? Well, it's coming.
Yeah, it is.
You know, we have a lot of the Avalanche train up, the austere environment courses. These things are designed to push people and take people out of their comfort zone so that they can grow, so that they can achieve something. We don't grow on the couch. Well, some people do, you know.
Not the kind of growth we want.
Well, you know, I saw a short clip the other day, and I can't say that I disagree with this woman's point. She is saying, she's a rather large, obese woman. She's saying that it takes dedication and discipline to become as fat as she is, and that is a form of bodybuilding, and that it should be a category at like Mr. Olympia. And, you know, I mean, they have to put work. They have to put work.
they do.
Like, Jared, I've tried to eat 300 calories in a day. Like, I've tried, okay, like I know how much I need to eat. Man, it is work. It is so much easier to just like go exercise. You know, some of these people, we were at Hershey Park a couple weeks ago with the girls. I'm impressed. The effort that these people go, the money that they must spend. You know, like I can't afford that. I don't have that kind of dedication.
No, I grew up around here, as you know, as listeners know, and there is something to be said for the wonders that the Pennsylvania Dutch diet can do on individuals. There's so many obese individuals that don't exercise and just eat that diet.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of on full display.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
It was. You know what was okay?
But then you tell me there were people who were trying.
The people that were trying, that was the ones that got me the most. It's like, you know, you see someone that they're in the little scooter thing, you know, and if I see someone that's like my age or younger, I'm looking for some sort of like, oh, they've got their leg in a cast or something, you know.
Or, they're an amp because they lost it by mine or combat. Or,
100%.
That's
You know,
what
I
we're
got
used
it.
to.
I got it. You know, I was seeing fully able-bodied individuals in those little renter strollers, and I overheard one guy. He was like, "Yeah, it's only $45, and I don't have to walk up the hills."
The hills at Hershey Park.
The hills at Hershey Park. And I look at our society and I feel serious remorse, you know?
You'd mentioned earlier, and it's true, that masculinity, the role of the father, the role of the husband, is under attack. I completely believe it. And you correctly stated that a lot of our classes are teaching not necessarily what it means to be a man, but being strong and bettering yourself. And I find it interesting that
that's a human skill. It's not a man or
Yes.
woman skill, you know. And I think that the moment we start to say masculinity, people start getting all like drawn in these lines of, oh, well, you think that I do think there are roles for men and women. I do, 100%. I cannot have a baby. I can't. no matter what society is going to tell me or science, I know truth. Okay, that's a truth.
Yeah.
You know, there are things that I can do that a woman can't do. I am the first person to say that I was in a combat role. We were doing operations other than normal, gunfighting. We had a woman with us, and this is all higher stuff, so I'm not going to go into too many details. She was far superior at what we were doing. Hands down, no questions asked. She was a better linguist. She was more capable. And in that place, she took lead. But she was also the first to realize and admit the fact that the moment that we went into the hinter, the moment that we went into the austere environment, that she was a liability. She knew her physical limitations. She knew that my partner and I, we were more skilled in those environments and that we were in the lead. And that was one of the best working relationships that I've ever had with a boss. She was my boss for that moment. Out of anything. I mean, it worked. It really did. And one of the reasons it worked is we were able to recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses.
And therefore your roles.
Our roles and the appropriate times to use.
Yes.
It's like, I'm probably going to get a bunch of hate about this. I was against Project Diana. Project Diana, for those of you who don't know, that's the project to put women in special forces. It was a political movement. It had nothing to do with actually putting people in positions where they are most effective and most useful. I always say the moment that a woman is a starting quarterback for an NFL team, the moment that happens, I will stop my arguments. I will stop it. No questions in. Okay. There are women out there. Shoot, my wife is stronger than I am. Pound for pound, she is stronger than I am. However, I can still bench 245. She can't. Okay. But I have her by 100 pounds. Okay. She is benching, 135 and she's 120. Okay. She is stronger than I am, but there are things that I can do that she can't just based off physiology.
Well, and that's the thing that's how that attack is coming at us is instead of saying there's differences, strengths and weaknesses, they're trying to say, oh no, everyone's equal.
Everyone's the same.
And then how do we make everyone the same? By lowering standards and by attacking a certain type. Yeah. So men and women are the same, so we need to attack the man. We need to attack the father. We need to attack the husband to try to
those that are showing
level that playing field.
Those that are showing aggressive tendencies, we want to cut that down. We want to remove that behavior from society.
I saw how that worked in Serenity.
Yeah. If you have not seen that, watch that. When you sent me this list, this topic for the podcast, I started thinking. I was like, I'm a perfect example. Okay, I grew up. My father left when I was 3 years old. All right, my father was a scumbag. I swore up and down that I would never be a father because I was so terrified of being that man that if I was never a father, if I was never a husband, then I would never be him. Well, that's not true, but that's what society is going to tell you. Okay, so what happened? I recognized I grew up. First off, I grew up. I became a man, not a child, and I realized that I can be a husband and I can be a righteous husband who honors my wife. And that's the first thing that is going to prevent me from being my father because he was not a righteous man.
Yes.
He did not honor his wife. So by doing that and being extra dedicated and being wary and preventing myself from being in positions where as a man I could be tempted, I grew strength and I was able to be better than my father. And then I had children. And I will tell you that my first all the gunfights, being blown up, all those things, the scariest moment of my life was April 27th, 2002. Shoot, I get emotional thinking about it right now. And that's the day that my oldest daughter was born. My wife came home from work and she didn't feel well. We were going to have a barbecue that night. And I was like, I got to go take a nap. You'll feel better, She came down from a nap and she's like, I'm not feeling good. So we went to the hospital. And 24 hours later, we had Evelyn. And I remember at one point, the doctor pulled me aside and said, so, Mr. Johnson, I just want you to know that, the baby's not going to make it. So you need to be real, comfort your wife and, be prepared. And it was like, what? Evelyn is 21 years old now. I would love to find that doctor, be like, yeah, you're wrong. What did you know? Fancy degree. Lots of prayer with that child. But that was the most terrifying experience of my life. So much so that Pam and I, we were done. We were never having any more children. That Evelyn was going to be an only child, and that was it. And then Pam and I both were spiritual people, and we prayed because, we weren't just going to make that decision on our own. And we were told, no, you have more children. And we did not like that answer because, no, we weren't happy. That was a terrifying experience. But again, that was taking away what we wanted, our desires, and going with what, the Lord wanted. And now we have 4 beautiful children. I mean, shoot, you guys hear me talk about Gwen all the time and all the things that she does. Can you imagine if we stopped at Evelyn?
Yeah.
We wouldn't have Gwen. We wouldn't have Marilyn. We wouldn't have Zoe. I mean, I can't imagine my life, especially with the things that have happened in the last few years, without those girls. I mean, so it's like society will tell you that it's okay to not have kids. Society will tell you it's okay to just have 1 or 2. You really have to be prayerful about that.
If you're not already listening to, you guys need to listen to Jordan Peterson. He's a wonderful man and has so much insight. One of the things I like about him is he can articulate thoughts and arguments and truth. I already will understand and I already believe, but I can't articulate and put it the way that he does. And one thing that I know is true, and the reason I brought up Jordan Peterson is because he can articulate it much better than me, so go check him out if you haven't. I'm assuming most of you who are listening and watch this podcast probably already do. But one of the things he talks about, and I believe, is that you as an individual can't fully grow until you do find that spouse, until you are married. And that husband and that wife, that man and that woman need to come together. And in that righteous marriage, they're putting the other person ahead of themselves. Not some selfish thing where, okay, we're going to get married for convenience, or we're going to live together for convenience, and we're going to get gratification, physical gratification off of each other, where I'm just concerned with myself and I'm getting pleasure from that.
That's one of the problems that I'm seeing in my friends. I have a lot of friends that in the past 10 years, they waited until they were in their 30s. Mm-hmm. Then they got married. They got married to someone because, oh, she's so hot. And I would say to them, okay, well, what's going to happen when she's not? And now they're 10, 15, 16 years into these marriages, and she's not hot anymore. They'd never had that good foundation of a family or putting the other person first. And it's always been this cohabitation, roommate with benefits thing. And now they're both miserable. Mm-hmm. Where, they don't have to be.
What that couple needs to do, again, they can make it a matter of prayer, because I want to say it's generally true, but maybe not right for every couple, is they need to start having children. And like you said, they need to have more than 1 or 2. They need to have multiple children. And what that does, that starts to form that nucleus where that man and woman, they have to work together, and they're sacrificing of their time and everything for the rearing of those children. If you look at it from as I believe, as a believer's perspective, what's the very first commandment? Be fruitful and multiply. First commandment given to mankind. So by us leaving our parents, finding that spouse, getting married, having children, and now starting that process all over again, that nucleus of building, that's where real growth from that individual comes from. That's where all the growth has come from, majority of the growth for me.
You look at throughout history, we'll take all of because you and I are both religious men. Mm-hmm. Take that all away, okay? You have one tribe that you've got 10 couples, and those 10 couples put their temporal and desires first. They chase after money, they chase after cars, they chase after the things of the world. And then you have over on the other side another tribe with 10 couples, and they decide to grow a family. At some point, tribe A is going to all die off. Tribe B is going to continue to flourish.
Yes.
And they'll get all those things that, Tribe A acquired, and it is a sadness. I think that, going back to talking about World War II and, putting the children first, and then you had that first generation, the boomers, of the me first and gimme gimmes, and that's where, like, you know, we start to see for the first time these crazy divorce rates because people are selfish. They're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about their children. Then we have that generation, like my generation, where I grew up without that father figure. And where did I go to find my father figures? I went to media. I was lucky. I look at some of the stuff that I watched, and man, I could have very easily been misled. I've watched all the James Bonds. What did James Bond teach me about how to take care of women? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Fortunately, when I watched that, I was not paying attention to how he handled women. I was more concerned about the gadgets, you know? And you said in the little text you sent me about this, like what media kind of taught you how to be a man and things like that. I've had this conversation several times. I was in Albania and it was pouring down rain. We're stuck in a hotel waiting for the weather to clear so we could go back out and continue to train. Albanians don't want to train in the rain. And there were 12 of us, 12 guys. We were all either MARSOC, SEALs, or SF guys. 11 of us grew up without fathers. We were all the same age. We were all in our early to late 30s. There was one guy that had a dad. We made fun of him. We were like, oh, you're so weak, you had to have a dad teach you how to be a man. But one of the things, we all had the same media. We talked about that. And we all took very similar things from that media. And we all had that experience of either a friend or a brother or someone that didn't take those same things, you know, didn't fall down. And it really came out with, we were very strong as individuals. I don't mean to like sit here and brag and be like, yeah, you know, I was able to pull it off, because it shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't be raised off of the A team, and you know, you shouldn't be raised off of
Airwolf or Knight Rider.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. It is a sad thing, and especially the danger of, we talked about how media has shifted. Would Airwolf or Knight Rider be the shows that they were in the 80s today?
No, heavens no.
You know, I mean, the Knight Rider would be a complete idiot, and the only way he would be any success is because there would be women who are directing him appropriately, and he would be more comic relief.
Yeah.
You know, and that's very unfortunate. One of the immediate thoughts that I came to was Dragon's Vow and Twilight. So I've read that book several times throughout my life. One of the main characters is a half-elf. So he grew up without a father, living in his mother's, you know, parents' house and stuff like that. And he doesn't have an identity. He has an identity, and he has all these struggles. And he finds himself in a leadership role where he doesn't want to be in that leadership role. And I remember reading that and thinking, okay, well, what if I was in that role? What can I do now?
You've got the beard.
I've been trying. That's one. I grow the beard to hide my elven heritage. Yes. If you guys didn't know, it's to hide the elven heritage. Having that, what I could be in that leadership. I could have this group that is depending on me and looking at me. And it turned out I did. I've had that multiple times, mainly my family. You know, and things that book triggered me into, how do I lead? Started me in that thought process of, how do I become a father? And, you know, a lot of things I figured out, and a lot of things I messed up. But we are given a great gift, and that is, if you choose to live your life with a good, righteous foundation, if you choose to, you know, look to a higher power and reach out for those resources, anything is possible.
You know, that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this, and what started triggering my thoughts along this way is, you didn't have your father, but there were other resources and other helps, good media, as an example. And I know to some extent also your belief in God. Yeah. That certainly helped when you were younger, but I know it really helped
Oh, yeah.
when you get older.
Yeah.
But that's not even there these days.
Yeah.
So people raised in similar circumstances, or worse circumstances. There's really, what is there modern that they can fall back
turn
on?
to? Yeah, and it goes back to they're getting the Call of Duty generation, where it's this instant thing, where there's no consequences, where there is no thought process to things. I was watching a little YouTube clip talking about different video games, and there's a new game that's out that it's a Dungeons and Dragons game where it is, you can make all sorts of, you can make the wrong decision. It's not on rails. You can kill someone that then later
Has consequences?
Was supposed to be
Yeah.
like an ally, but because you killed them now, because they were put in front of you and they may have done something you didn't like, well, now you don't have that person later. And it changes the outcome of the game. And people are like, oh, this is so weird. Oh, this is so neat. And I'm sitting there thinking like, shoot, I wish I had time because this sounds great. I would love to have to weigh my consequences because that's reality. Too often we have this like, you know, any of the games, oh yeah, well, shoot the guy and the bodies disappear.
Let's go back to that idea of the attack of on men, the attack of masculinity. And, you know, what are the arguments and the reasons why they're making movies the way they are? They're making media the way they are. Oh, because we need these strong, powerful women. Why didn't you like the last 3 Star Wars movies? You know, what had this powerful woman? Well, it's because it's just like you said, it's that instant gratification. There's no struggle. Mm-hmm. There have been plenty of powerful, good female role models. I'm thinking of Ripley from the first 2 Aliens movies. She struggled. And you see that labor, that struggle, and then that growth, and then she's able to, through trial and error, to be able to be successful. Wonderful movie.
Again, going to our generation, Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
You know, I think Sarah Connor is a great example, and I've shared it with my daughters. Mm-hmm. She started out, she was a waitress. Like, she had no concept of anything. I don't know, she was, it's been a while, probably in Hollywood trying to become an actress, right? You know, that's what they were all doing, right? And then finds herself in this situation where the scales are pulled off her eyes, and she understands that there's this greater conflict. And by the second movie, she has society has caged her because her belief society is attacking her, but she has not given up. She is not broken. She is a strong woman. She's doing pull-ups in the prison. You know, she is still working. She is still struggling to be capable when the time comes. Strong woman. And that, you know, when you force something, when you take a character that has no growth, has no path, I don't care if it's male or female.
Yeah.
You just give them powers. There's no entertainment to it. There's nothing.
What they're missing is that the point of the movie, the point of the tale, the point of that Bard's tale are we're trying to learn lessons through allegory, through these stories. It's not the finish, it's not the reward, it's the struggle to get there. That's the real benefit. That's where the real storytelling comes in. And that's in a sense, that's one of the purposes of life. Life is a struggle. And our growth comes from that struggle. The good times mixed with the bad times and how we get through those bad times. And both of us in similar ways and in different ways, we've hurt, we've struggled, and we've been able to learn from that, as painful as it's been, and we're better people because of it. Nothing was just given to us. I think one of the smartest, best decisions I ever made, let me rephrase that, because I didn't do it myself, my wife and I made, is when we made a decision when we were having kids, that 1, we're going to keep having kids, and 2, even though Army was not paying us enough to get by, we stopped taking the government handouts. And boy, talk about a struggle. But what growth from us finally, no, we're not going to do that. And so many people, they take that easy way, whether they choose to or they just don't know any better and think that that's life. We want that instant gratification. And with the instant gratification, there's no growth. There's no progress.
I mean, we can talk to our friends that work in law enforcement. You know, Flynn, He'll tell you about he hits houses in the ghetto that have bigger TVs than he does.
Yeah.
And that is such a problem where the base responsibilities are taken away. And so you're not concerned about providing for the food. Then it just goes to, I'm seeking instant gratification. I'm seeking that momentary distraction.
What toys or what entertainment can
and
I have?
mean, it goes back to bread and circus. Mm-hmm. You know, give them bread, give them circus. And then when we want to cause conflict, well, that guy has a bigger piece of bread than you do.
Yep.
You know, and then it's not the fact that they're angry at the government. They're angry at that guy that has a bigger piece of bread. Has nothing. They're both getting bread. You know, neither one is actually, has any power or any control. And you get that divisiveness that keeps the masses occupied, hating each other, instead of making any necessary changes. And it is very, very telling of our society.
I read an article today. And let me bring it up here. I don't know if you saw it or not. So I'm reading this off of Fox News. Ohio woman killed mom with frying pan and a knife over bad grades. So let me read some of this. An Ohio woman bludgeoned her mother with a frying pan and stabbed her dozens of times after her parents found out she was kicked out of college for poor grades. Sidney Powell, 23, of Akron, was convicted last week of 2 counts of murder, felonious assault, and tampering with evidence for the killing of 50-year-old Brenda Powell in the family's home. Sidney, who'd been out on... Okay, I don't care about that. Let me just read exactly what happened. Okay. On March 3rd, 2020, Sidney's father, Stephen, could not access the portal to pay her tuition. Setting in motion that afternoon's deadly confrontation with her mother, Sidney, then 19, confessed to her father that she'd been expelled from Mount Union University and had been keeping it a secret for months. She had failed 3 of her 4 classes in December 2019, but continued to live on campus and attend sorority meetings until school officials evicted her from her dorm on February 24th. For a week, the young woman stayed in hotels rather than tell her parents the truth. After Stephen told his wife about the weeks-long deceit, she returned home from her job to discuss the matter with her daughter. School officials, her mother worked at a school. School officials testified that while they're on the phone with Brenda, they heard repeated thuds and screaming. Then the call disconnected. One of the officials tried to call back, and Sidney answered, pretending to be her mother. However, the official did not buy it and called the police. And the article goes on. But reading that and seeing that, obviously, to me, it's obvious that they never told that girl no growing up. They were giving her everything. She's at school, not paying for herself, not working for herself. Yeah. She's there to have a good time and party, all on the dime of her parents. So even after only 4 classes. Now, I believe 4 is the minimum you can do. You shouldn't be able to do more. But failing 3 of those 4 and then getting kicked out, what's she doing? She's still living there. And she's still partying with the sorority sisters. Hey, this is just living that life, living that dream. And then reality finally kicks in. And now she's been so warped, she's been so given everything, that her response is a temper tantrum where instead of accepting any kind of responsibility for herself, she kills her mother. And it's, you know what? She has to suffer the consequences of her actions. But I would argue it's not wholly her fault. It's her parents' fault for raising her that way, by never telling her no, by giving her everything.
It goes to Heinlein. We've talked about it. If you guys have not read Starship Troopers, read Starship Troopers. Okay.
Yes, you can look in the mic and you can tell them that.
Yes, I mean it. In that book, Heinlein talks about, he uses as a commentary on the 20th century, and he talks about how there were these gangs of youths in the park. It wasn't safe to go out, and the point he made was, they weren't disciplined. they never got spanked, and they never had any kind of consequence. And I'm not saying that you need to spank your children. I'm just saying you need to have consequences. And I will tell you right now, having 4 daughters, my 4 daughters are all individuals. Very much so. One of them I can just look at, and that's all I need to do. And that was enough that she is going to fix whatever it is. One of them, it does not matter. When she was little, you could yell at her, you could give her a treat, you could take things away from her, you could swat her. Nothing fazed her. We were at a loss. And then one day she tried to run away, and Pam had done her hair in a little top knot, and Pam just caught her by the top knot. An instant change in behavior. Like, just at that child, we knew then and there that was how you could discipline. All you had to do was hold her hair. You hold her by her like she was a little carrot or something, and instantly she wanted to be good. Like, whatever I'm doing, I need to fix it because I want you to release me, and I will stop doing that behavior. But we learned with each child what needed to be done so that they understood consequences to actions. We didn't wait until they were adults where there were no consequences and suddenly introduce consequences. And then it's like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. You know, and that's what happened in this situation. This child had never had any consequences.
Never.
And
you know, what do we teach? Principle-based training.
Mm-hmm.
So that principle is there has to be consequences for those actions. Good, bad, whatever, there has to be. And that's your role as a parent, is to hold those children accountable. Now, like you said, and like I learned too with our kids, they're all different. That's where those techniques come in. What works on one child does not work with another child.
You know, my youngest, we have to have occasionally, I would say maybe once a quarter, or maybe every, couple times a year, that counseling where we sit down and we go over the negative behaviors and we talk it out. Mm-hmm. Because she is not responsive until I start pointing out, okay, so you're doing this. This is what everyone else sees that behavior as. And I start to paint a picture for her, and that works with her. And it has been, very interesting to see the growth in her as she starts to realize her behaviors and recognize these things. And, I'm bringing her up because mm-hmm. she's 13. She is now becoming a woman, and she is correcting things before I have to say it. She's starting to recognize how the way that she does something or treats other people, how it affects. And it's so joyous watching her become a human being,
I think, and again, I'm just reading into that article. Maybe I'm way off, but probably a mistake that they made is, and I see a lot of people make this mistake, is I don't want to be mean. I want to be a friend. I want to be a friend to my kids. Well, I'm not a friend to any of my children per se. I'm their parent. Mm-hmm. I'm their father. And that love is so much deeper than any kind of friendship. And because I love them, because I truly love them, I discipline them. I set those boundaries, and there are consequences to those boundaries. And if, I just want to be their buddy, just want to be their friend, then I would allow for a lot of stuff to go by that shouldn't go by. I wouldn't be having those counseling moments like you're talking about, and having those heart-to-heart discussions.
The relationship that I have with my girls is very, very deep. And part of that is that I was their parent first. And I would tell the girls all the time, hey, I have princesses. In every princess story, there's a villain. If I need to be the villain so that you can turn out to be a successful human being, I will be the villain. I will be mean. You will be able to tell people how mean your father was. But at some point, you'll look back and you'll be like, Dad didn't let me do that thing. And I grew from it. And I became that person that I'm supposed to be. And, the ones that are adults, they recognize that. And now, because I have loved them and I have disciplined them and mm-hmm. I have been the villain from time to time, mm-hmm. we have a really great relationship. My my girls were a huge support to me when I needed them. And I built them into human beings. And Pam helped. I mean, Pam did a lot. Oh, shoot, Pam did it. I was gone all the time. And those girls are so capable because we weren't their friends, because we did push them. We didn't make things easy. You know, one of the decisions that Pam and I made very, very early on is we were never going to pick them up. When they fell down, they had to recover.
Yep.
And after they picked themselves up, after that, we would then love them. Once they had initiated, you know, it changed throughout the stages as they were little, but they still had to self-recover. And I think that's so key.
Yep, we do the same thing. You know, unless there's a bone sticking out or there's blood gushing. Oh, you're hurt? Oh, come here and tell me how you're hurt.
Yeah, explain it.
Yeah.
No, it is. I look at this. One of the greatest achievements that I have, one of the things that I'm the most proudest about, is the fact that I'm a father. I mean, 9 combat vacations, Green Beret. I've done all these things that, you know, people look up and be like, "Oh, that's so amazing! That's so amazing!" Yeah. What's my lasting legacy? My children. I had a SAS guy that I worked with on one of my trips, and he was complete atheist. You know, he used to laugh at me because I had religious values and things like that. And we went back and forth a lot. I put some scorpions in his bed.
Good.
Yeah. I took the stingers off. I'm not a complete jerk. Froze them. Yeah. So they warmed up when he laid down to go to sleep. Yes, I'm that guy. Anyways, we were having the conversation one day, and he said, you know, we have to raise our children to raise our grandchildren. That's the legacy that we're going to have. He did not believe in an afterlife. He thought that, you know, when he buys it here, that's it. And the only way that he is going to live on is if he raises his children correctly, and that they have children and they have children and the generations remember each other. And I mean, you know, you and I both have that foundation and understanding genealogy. And I think that's a very important thing. And if you guys don't do genealogy, that is such a fascinating thing. It is definitely something that is amazing to learn about where you came from and who you are. You know,
that reminded me, again, in preparation to this, just thinking about some of the media that I grew up on. And there's an older, actually it's one of the last movies he made, but a John Wayne movie called The Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen that?
Yeah.
And that scene at the end where, or near the end, when the rustlers are there and they start telling him, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And he's just, no. And then he set the example for all his boys, all those cowboys. And then that was, I think, one of 2 movies where John Wayne actually was killed. But him just refusing to do the wrong thing. I'm going to stand up, even if it means I'm going to die in front of these boys, which he did. He died doing the right thing. And that's just impactful.
You know, John Wayne, I grew up with the story about how he used his Canadian citizenship not to go to World War II, and all the other actors that went to World War II, you know, Jimmy Stewart being one of the best.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Hands down. And if you don't know that story, look up Jimmy Stewart. That guy.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. He flew combat ops through Vietnam.
Yeah. Without permission.
Yes, without permission.
Yeah. I had always heard that story, and I was kind of like, you know, little small distaste that I had for him. And then in 2010, I was fortunate enough to have attend a seminar that was taught by General Singlaub. Singlaub was one of the founders of the OSS, and he told a different story of John Wayne. John Wayne, the studio that he was signed for back in the day, you were owned by the studio, you know, like Marilyn Monroe worked for MGM or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
In his contract, they had it that he had to adhere to his Canadian citizenship and not enlist in the Army. It was contractual, and he fought it and tried to get out of it. He could not. And so at the time, and I don't care where you stand on MacArthur. I'm not a fan of MacArthur. I think that he abandoned men in the Philippines to take his furniture. And that's a true story. And that just, he's an officer, you know, and a bad one. But MacArthur did not like the OSS. He was against the OSS doing stuff in the South Pacific and fought it. And so there were operatives that were in the South Pacific. John Wayne would be a courier doing USO stuff, going and visiting troops, and he was passing information from the OSS to their operatives. And he would not, when people called him a coward, he would never, because he believed that was top secret. He would not say it. He would take people calling him a coward to the day that he died and never say that he did what he could. And then I've got General Shinglab telling us these stories, and I was like, oh, I wonder about that. I looked it up, 100% true. 100% true. The man he found a way. When he was limited, you know, he lost a lawsuit, all that stuff, he still found a way to serve. And again, that goes to the difference in the generations.
Yeah.
You know, now you got the generations. Can you imagine Vin Diesel, any of the Rock, any of these action stars? You know, if World War III breaks out, imagine one of them. You know,
there's
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise can fly fighter jets. Do you think he's going to go fly fighter jet? No, I'm too old. I'm too old now. You know, I can do my own stunts, but I'm too old.
There's always Adam Driver. I have hope for that guy.
But he did that before,
Yeah,
right? You know, we'll see how he does in the new Heat movie.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I can't wait. I would assume, I'm guessing, that he's going to put everything he possibly can. Because you know he saw that scene when he was in Marine boot camp of Val Kilmer doing the reload. So, yeah. I wanted to, another article, though. I really don't need to read much of it. I'll just read the headline. Canada Nazi scandal demonstrates the dangers of historical illiteracy, says the Polish government. So you familiar with that?
No, I haven't heard this one. Yeah.
Oh, so last week, what's his name? The Ukraine guy, Zelensky?
Yeah.
He came over and, you know, went blah, blah, blah at the UN, and he went up to Canada. So while he was there at basically their version of the State of the Union, Justin Trudeau, like they do at our State of the Union, you know, they have all these like random people. Oh, and this person is the greatest. Yay, let's praise him. They bring up this guy. He's like, oh, this guy, you know, he fought the Nazis in not fought the Nazis. No, I'm already screwing up. Yeah, he fought in World War II against the Russians. Yay! You know, he fought for freedom. Yay! Well, the guy, he was a Nazi. He was in an SS brigade, and the guy actually escaped to Canada, and he was there like semi in hiding for all this time. I'm going to get popped. They're going to get me. So here, a legitimate Nazi who fought in World War II, who his battalion, they weren't German. I guess they were Polish or Ukraine. I don't know, whatever. The point is, the guy is a freaking Nazi, and it was very easy for them to find he was a Nazi. He was with an SS brigade, and they did all kinds of atrocities.
Yeah.
And they're there praising him and celebrating him, yay, because the little information they chose to display about him fit their political narrative. And just, man, a great illustration or point that if you are ignorant of history, if you're ignorant of these principles of righteousness, these principles of truth, then you're going to be so easily misled, deceived, and then, you know, standing there and praising and clapping just like their entire, you know, whatever their entire government, a parliament, whatever, they were all, you know, giving this guy a standing elevation.
It is very easy to pick and choose and say the things that you want to say about anyone. I can sit here and take Abraham Lincoln and how he is one of the greatest villains of all of American history. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about how he let the country fall apart and all this, or we can talk about how, you know, he freed the slaves. Oh, did he? Oh, in the southern countries, you know, you look at the Emancipation Proclamation. Said nothing about the Union territories. You know, it's very easy to pick and choose and present historical figures to whatever narrative you want, or anyone. It's one of the reasons why I say you got to look at the whole picture. I'm a huge history buff. I love reading about World War I. I think that is a huge time shift where we went from one standard of warfare for thousands of years. You know, you can argue that once we introduced the firearm, it was basically, it's still artillery. You know, it's just like the javelin. It's just like the bow and arrow. The musket was,
As soon as we got the BAR,
yeah.
and then now that changed.
The Maxim gun, the BAR, and then accurate artillery. When we're talking that I can pinpoint accuracy, those early World War I, you know, turn of the century, those manuals, that is when warfare changed. So I'm fascinated by that. And that leads me down all sorts of rabbit holes. And you can take anyone from those times and you can villainize them because we're looking at them from our time frame. We're looking at them versus our standards, you know, and the thing is we need to learn the lessons from them. And we cannot just take someone and be like, oh, well, they did this bad thing. Yeah, got it. How many of our tactics, how many of our things came out of the Nazis? You know, modern warfare, you know.
We're both paratroopers, aren't we?
Right? Okay. So are we going to choose not to use something because a evil man used it? If it is a good technique or tool and it can be used for a righteous purpose, that's one of our goals. That's one of our mandates to make things into good things, you know.
Well, and let's bring this conversation back full circle. You know, what got me
gonna
thinking?
circle back?
Yeah, there you go. No, what got me thinking about all this? It was listening to these guys, good group of guys, talking about Band of Brothers, and just seeing how there were so many holes in their education, and how they didn't have that context that both you and I do, and then how important it is to be educated and to learn real history. You know, just as it's essential. And if you don't, like I've said on this podcast so many times and in different ways and in a lot of classes, if you don't learn from history, if you don't understand basic math, 2 + 2 = 4, then you can easily be deceived by someone saying 2 + 3 = 4. And you're like, well, I don't know. It looks good to me. And you need to be educated.
Yeah. And it takes you putting forth some effort. You know, you have to read some books. You have to seek things out. It's not going to be given to you. I learned that very, very early on. I got you're dyslexic. I was, told when I was in 3rd grade, you're dyslexic. And that was the label that they needed to put me in this other classroom, and they didn't have to do anything with me. I found myself 17, and I had a 5th grade reading level. And I thought, shoot, I'm going to go out in society. I'm going to graduate high school because everyone's graduating high school. That's a thing. And I can't read, past a 5th grade level. So I took it upon myself to educate myself. The teachers weren't doing it. That was someone else's job, and, it got passed by. So Dragons Von Twilight, I got an unabridged copy on audiobook, and I had the book, and I just went page by page and listened to that thing, and I memorized the shape of every word, and I read the negative space. But I had to do it myself, and that was a catalyst for me. No one's teaching me history. No one's teaching me the things that I need to learn, so I have to do and have to have the individual responsibility. And then when I learn something, I can't just hold that knowledge. I have to share it. I mean, people come to classes. What do we talk about? Hey, you guys paid attention to Rhodesia. Have you read any books on Rhodesia?
Wasn't that awesome?
Oh, that was.
That paratrooper?
Yes.
And
yes.
Rhodesia?
Yes.
Oh, I wrote my... Oh.
One of the things that I found was a huge hole in my knowledge was the Balkans. That happened in the 90s. And it is actually kind of hard to get information about that. I have actually had to really dig into it.
There's a lot of stuff that happened there that people don't
That
want.
they don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of fortunate. There's an individual that I go to church with. He's a retired doctor. He was, at one point, he was the chief medical officer for the UN in the Balkans.
Do I know him?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
tell me
can't
after.
think. Yeah, I can't
Okay,
think of
yeah.
his name.
Yeah, you can just tell me later.
Yeah. So I've talked to him, and he has, of course, his lane is all the medical stuff. And so getting that firsthand account, it's just, you have to seek these things out. No one is going to give them to you. People are going to give you distractions, and it's, again, they want to distract you. Bread and circus. You have to look and say, is this bread and circus? Is that bread truly feeding me? Is that circus doing nothing more than entertaining me? And it's very easy. Like, I am a huge documentary nut, and I realized that sometimes my documentaries are just circus because, it's interesting, but what am I gaining from it? All the true crime documentaries that are out there right now, are you really gaining anything about watching a movie about Jeffrey Dahmer? Everyone's like, it's so great, you got to watch it. Why? Why do I have to put that toxin into my head? I have a limited amount of time on this planet. I've got to utilize that the best I can. And it's our own individual responsibility to become better. We haven't arrived.
No, we haven't. So then, you as an individual, what can we do? You can only do with what you can do in your individual sphere. You as a person, your family, those people that your friends and your associates. That's what you need to work on.
It goes back to the old saying, light a candle. You don't hide it under a bushel, right?
Yeah.
You put it on a hill. When you learn something, you have to share it.
Yep.
It is a disservice. And I got it. Some of you out there, you work in these really crazy environments where you can't express things because HR is going to get involved and all of that. Don't let that be an excuse. There are people that are out there that are hungry for the knowledge that you have. Share it with people. You've got to communicate. That's the only way we're going to get better. Lift where we stand. We can sit here and discuss what the best way of doing it is, or we can just act.
Do it.
Yeah, I mean, we have this podcast. I've said it before. I do not like being on video. I don't like sounding like an idiot and stumbling over my words. But it is important that, because you and I both have the knowledge and experiences that we have, and we have struggled in just classes alone to convey it to a large audience. This last weekend we had 10?
Yeah.
We had 10 students. 10 people got our knowledge for 72 hours. This podcast is going to go out and it's going to reach hundreds. Thousands. And okay, I can't argue with that. So I spend 2 hours, recording this, and the hour or so that we did prep work prior to doing this versus 72 hours with 10 guys. The bang for buck, it definitely is here. So we have to keep doing this.
Yeah.
Whether I'm comfortable doing it or not. I have knowledge. I can't hide it. And I encourage you guys out there, do the same. Don't be afraid. And I know it's uncomfortable, but you got to share. Got to share your experiences.
Yep. Well, I think it's a good place to wrap up. Appreciate your time, and it's a privilege. It's a pleasure to do this podcast with you. And Chris, you're one of the smartest guys I've ever known.
You don't have very many friends, so
I know. What was the quote?
That was the quote. Yeah.
The one from Tombstone.
That is a one I like.
I said that before we recorded.
Yeah, give that quote, and I want to make a comment on that.
That quote. So it's the one guy asking Doc Holliday, because he's all sick near the end of the movie. Why are you doing all this? You ought to be in a hospital. And then his response was, Wyatt Earp is my friend. And then the response to that was, I've got lots of friends. And then Doc Holliday said, I don't.
I think that is such a important thing. He kept his true friends so tight. I don't have a lot of friends. I have so many acquaintances, and I have a few close friends that, yeah, I'm on my deathbed, but they need me. That's where I'm going to be, because I have those friends that are true friends. We have plenty of associates, you know.
Some really good people.
Yeah, and there are those just people they're fun to be around. You know what? Sometimes your friends aren't fun to be around. They make you better. You know? I mean, Jared and I, like brothers, will piss each other off, but that's because we're friends.
Yeah.
True friends.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys.
See you next time.